guys, so I am back. I'm going to stop apologizing for my shiny face because there's just nothing I can do. It's just really hot. Okay. It's gonna be okay, Lily. You're not gonna melt. It's fine. It's fine. Anyway though, so as you can see from the title, I wanted to talk about
Boobs in YA Books.
So I recently joined the Book Riot's mailing list for YA. I have been reading random articles on their site for a while now, but never joined any of the mailing lists, and I recently did, as I said. And one of the first emails I received from them talked a lot about body image. The author was coming out with a new book, and it featured a bunch of short stories. It also had a bunch of links to different writers and their stances on their body, and how they either grew into it, what their growing up experience was like. One of them, was about Black women, like growing into both your sexuality and having an over-sexualized body often. And they were all interesting. But the one that really caught my eye was the one titled On Boobs in YA, which is what this video is named after, and I'll put a link to in the description, by Kelly Jensen. Really spoke to me. She starts off by talking about her experience as a young girl in 3rd grade doing ballet, having to get really intense, heavy-duty leotards, and then feeling self-conscious about her nipples showing because she developed early, and having people feel like they had the right to sort of comment on her body, comment on her chest size. There are quotes that I'm going to read later. The ones, honestly, this whole thing stood out to me. But the ones in particular that I do want to share, I will read. She was talking about how in YA, for her growing up, she never really saw boobs discussed. It was always in, getting to know your body or non-fiction stories, never in fiction stories. And from my personal experience, in the 4.5 romances video that I did a few weeks back, which I'll put a link to, I talked about one of the characters, Charlie Hastings.
From Girl at Heart by Kelly Oram.
She talked about being satisfied with her chest size, which she was a size D, and I was just like, bro, that's amazing, especially for her being athletic. I'm surprised that the author didn't make her boobs smaller, and the premise of the book was that she didn't really feel like she knew how to be a girl. Like, she was playing baseball her entire life, raised by her father, her grandfather. She had boy best friends, and she didn't really know how to be a girl. And I was surprised that it wasn't like, oh my gosh, my boobs are even tiny, so it makes me even more like manly, because all of the books that I read, the girls always are kind of disparaging of their small chests, or if not disparaging, they mention it, and then they wish they had big boobs like their best friend, or the girls with big breasts are the cheerleaders, or the promiscuous ones, or it's just, it was never the reality of the main character, and especially in the books, the not like other girl books, did you really kind of see the disparaging of chest size. Apparently, size D is pretty average, and now people think of like size D and double D as like huge, and I'm definitely not saying they're small, but as someone who has bigger boobs than that, I'm like, yeah, I guess they're average, but, so yeah, I really wanted to talk about this because it really surprised me when I then Googled like boobs in YA and on boobs in YA, breasts in YA, and like boob size and all this stuff like that. That was the only article I found. Everything else was, really inappropriate, on whether it was on Goodreads, whether it was on YouTube, whether it was just like, like real teens and their breasts and something about sex, and there was just a lot, and none of it was what I was looking for. It actually was making the point of the fact that, one, boobs are just like over-sexualized in general, and then two, that there's no talk of it, no talk of them. So in the article, Ms. Jensen discusses a few of the books that she's come across as a teen librarian or YA librarian or librarian for that age range. I don't remember like her official title. And it was really cool to read those descriptions because their focus was on the chest size, and I kind of wish it was just like, I want a fantasy story where, like a Katniss Everdeen or a Zelia de Bola is doing their thing.
And they also just happen to have big boobs.
We can see what things arise from that, and that's fine. And so, again, while it was great that these specifically touched on it, and I think that's definitely something that's needed, and I'm going to read them, just again, because I'll see books about, people talk about plus size women, like various things on size and body shape, but again, boobs just have always stayed out of it. Even in a few of the lesbian romances I've read, I think about whenever I read like romantic scenes, kissing scenes.
In the straight romances.
Everybody's always touching the guy's chest, but people just kind of gloss over the breasts, and it's like, I mean, it's there, like it's on her chest, we're transposing it now, and it's on her chest, and in YA it doesn't usually go beyond like kissing, or it's like a curtain fall, like when more happens. But again, it's just a very interesting difference, I feel. Okay, so I kind of already touched on this, but I did want to read this specific line. She says, "Boob Talks for Teens is relegated to puberty books. It's a discussion on forums near and far on the internet, in spaces meant to give teens a chance to ask their most embarrassing questions. Some do give broad recommendations, but even with all of the resources available, it's not something seen fictionalized and thereby normalized in YA books." Here's another quote. Here's another quote. I thought this one was really powerful, and it also resonated with me a lot. "If you haven't had boobs before, haven't navigated the reality of trying to fit into what your peers or teammates are fitting into, haven't navigated the reality that your body now belongs not to you, but to anyone who sees your upper chest fat deposits as theirs to talk about, to make jokes about, to treat with disrespect." And then I skipped a few lines. "Too often the conversation about big boobs is of reduction. For many, this is a real solution, be it for physical or preferential reasons. But for others, like me, and me, the suggestion of reduction of a part of my body which doesn't cause me pain and is healthy acts as a sharp and pointed reminder that my body lies outside of the imaginary norm and needs to be molded to fit within it, rather than demanding the world accommodate me. It's a reminder that we don't talk about boobs, about breast tissue, about what it is to live with boobs, big, small, floppy, droopy, perky, to live with boobs no matter what your gender identity, to live with boobs that need to be treated as a body part that's not expendable or easy to commodify. Every October, during Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we're reminded to wear pink, to fight for a cure, to save the boobies. But for people like me, for people like Greer and Kayla, the myriad others who haven't seen their stories on shelf, what about putting the people first? What about creating space to fit us, rather than making us fit the space? Why is it the only time we're comfortable with discussing a part of the body is when we're discussing a disease that wreaks havoc on it? Today, I roll my shoulders back and wear a $5 sports bra that doesn't fit when I do yoga. It does nothing for my boobs, except it does everything for my boobs. I can move them to twist my body, let them air out when I hang upside down, allow them to bounce when I jump and walk and swing my torso. I can buy prettier, better fitting bras now. I'm a grown-up with a paycheck and access to the internet, but Greer and her story took me back to each of the milestones of my life with breasts in a way that reminded me how little we're open about our body struggles and how many of those struggles are not ours to bear alone. They're struggles created by a culture too prude to be real, too scared to be open, too determined to be critical of the experiences of others, and too buttoned up to accept that letting it out is not something of which we should be ashamed. So I ended up reading a lot more than I anticipated, just because, again, reading it again, it meant a lot, like, reading that. Yes, I've seen a lot of things, people talking about, like, breast size and stuff like that, but never in this space, especially in this space that once meant so much to me, and still kind of does. I still read a lot of YA, even though it does drive me crazy, but it's what I want to write in, so I keep my finger on it. Also, a lot of times the premises and plots are interesting, and in another video I did, I think it was in my Children of Blood and Bone video, I talked about the fact that a lot of times it's adults who read YA. Yes, children do, or teens do as well, but it's the group who grew up with YA blowing up and popularizing the way they did, and we are the ones who still read it. Sometimes, yes, it's me and others like me in our early, am I still in my early 20s? Yeah, in our early to mid 20s who do have new adult books, but there's still more YA books, and it's easier to kind of cling to that. But it's also the adults who are reading it to like scope it out for their children, and also other adults who are just reading it for whatever reason. And so yes, there are teenagers who read it, but there are a large number of adults, and so this still meant a lot, especially because, as Kelly Jensen said, it was not something that was seen. I'm definitely going to read the books that she recommended, as I also said, and I don't think I actually brought anything new to the conversation, but I just wanted to talk about this because I was really excited to see this article. Like, it was really cool, and it was also really jarring to see that there was nothing else, and maybe I missed it, but if it wasn't on the first 2 pages of the Google search, well, then that also says a lot. I was going to wrap this up here, but actually, I figured I talked in general terms, but I do want to talk about like my growing up experience, I guess, with boobs and, you know, them developing fast, the fact that they are big. I have gained weight. This is also something that Kelly Jensen talks about, like her weight gain, and then her boobs got bigger, obviously, because like breast tissue is fat. But no matter what my weight is, my boobs are always going to be proportionally big to the rest of my body. And I remember in like 6th grade or something, I was in gym, and this girl like just shouted across the gym like, "Damn, Lily, what's your bra size?" And that was so awkward for me. I already felt like pretty awkward about my chest, especially, so my mom alternated in like whenever she got me clothes, it would be like, "Oh, this is the latest style." Like, I hated showing my arms, my shoulders and stuff like that, and it'd be like, you know, just wear this. But whenever if I had a band shirt on or something like that, like in high school, she'd be like, "Oh, this is too fitted," you know, and it's mainly about my breasts. Like, she would have issues because fitted things show them off, I guess, or this is always the impression, because, you know, women are always doing things that will eventually cause us to get into trouble, right?
Rather than saying that things are too fitted, my mom would always say that they were tight when they were fitted. Things that were too tight, obviously, I would not wear, so that was easy to deal with. I also had trouble finding clothes that fit my top half well, so I'm smaller on the bottom, and so I could walk into any store and get jeans, but a lot of stores that I went into, the shirts were geared toward plus-size women, and so the sizing that I needed was generally to accommodate my boobs, not my stomach. And so it was hard to find things that tucked in nicely around my tummy, but fit over my breasts and were not tight.
My sister took me to Lane Bryant. Like, that was an amazing experience. Like, getting the actual, being fitted and actually getting the right bra size. I remember going into Victoria's Secret, and they claimed to have measured me, but then they said that I was just whatever their largest size was, which did not fit. Initially, like, it was fine, but I grew, and so it was definitely a struggle, and it's a struggle that is definitely being talked about more, but was not talked about enough. So I'm really happy for this article. Like I said, I'm going to put the link in the description. If you guys have any boob stories, whether you've got tiny boobs, big boobs, you guys have any like boob experience, like representation, whether it's like small, medium, big, definitely put it in the comments. If you have any other links that I maybe just missed, I am definitely interested in reading. If there are any fantasy stories that feature characters with big boobs, that would be great. So I just thought about a book that does feature a character with disproportionately huge breasts. It's not YA though, so even when I was reading it, it's the Anita Blake series, which that's a whole other story for another time. The books were initially good, and then there's a lot that has gone down. And so that's the thing too, though. It seems like boobs are relegated to adult fiction, but teens are going through it. It's not just for the puberty books. You want to see yourself represented regardless of what your breast size is. And I think we're getting a lot in terms of representation for race, for sexuality, for all of this stuff, and even for certain body types with regard to books on like plus size women. But again, even it's focused only on the tummy.
Really appreciate. I definitely have one of those.
It's still never really on the boob or butt size, honestly. I can't speak too much to the booty, but that doesn't mean that I don't want all of the representation. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I shall see you in the next one.